We are Islamic Republic, Part 50. I beg your pardon, Part 40. We are Islamic Republic, Part 40. So the British knew that at least for the time being, however angry Muslims were, most of them would draw back from calling for an end to British rule, if only because the alternative seemed even worse. British actions over Bengal angered Hindus and Muslims. Congress, Indian National Congress, represented mostly Hindus. Muslim League was set up as a political voice for Muslims. Muslims were frightened of being dominated by Hindu majority. In just 6 years, from 1905 to 1911, the British had managed to unite both the otherwise separate communities, Muslims and Hindus, in presenting to have their own government in the country. It did not mean that Hindus and Muslims had forgotten their differences. It did mean, though, that they put aside their unim- animosity because they were both so angry with the British, in spite of British self confidence. A visit to India by King George V himself in 1911, many Indians of all faiths were increasingly questioning Britain's right to rule them. New political leaders were emerging to mobilize Indian opinion as Europe prepared for war. British future in India became increasingly uncertain. The British faced the rise of nationalism. World War I, 1914 to 1918, had a great effect on the political situation in India. It appeared to change Britain's attitude towards India and to open the door to self government. However, although the British agreed, at least in principle, that the Indians should have a far greater say in government, the rate at which they prepared to hand over any power at all was far too slow. For many Indians, impatience with the British led to ever increasing protests. How did World War I affect India? After 1911, the British knew they had to make more concessions to Indian opinion if they were to stop the worsening political situation. The Hindu dominated Congress and the Muslim League were both angry with the British, and after 1913, the League had joined Congress in calling for self government in India. By this time, great powers in Europe were preparing for a war, and British counted on support from her empire. She could not afford unrest in India. In 1913, a new and a brilliant Muslim leader, Qaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, emerged as an important spokesman for Muslim interest. His political leadership was to prove decisive for Muslims and vital in his eventual creation of Pakistan. You will learn a great deal more about the important leader in later discussion. At this time, Qaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah was a member of both Congress and the Muslim League. To start with, he was an idealist. He worked to find common ground between the Hindu Muslim so that, in spite of their differences, they could present joint demands to the British. He wanted an India in which all religious groups could live together in harmony. For 7 years before joining the Muslim League in 1913, he had devoted his political work to, to the Congress. This is evidence of his idealism. By 1916, Britain was engaged in a terrible conflict of the World War I. She faced stalemate with Germany along trenches of the Western Front in northern France. The British army suffered dreadful casualties. The contribution on Britain war effort and the sacrifice by the Indian was enormous. India's commitment of men and equipment was the single biggest contribution from any part of the British Empire. Most Indian leaders supported Britain in her war. In return, it was clear to the British that they were expected to extend more rights to the Indian people. It seemed to many Indian leaders that wartime was the right time to put demands to the British. India's contribution to World War One, 1,302,000. In fact, it's a large figure. Well, 1.3 million men served in the British Army from India. Casualties were 106,594, including 36,696 deaths. While stores and equipment valued uh, 800 million alone from India. Well, the sappers of the Indian army were making Photon Bridge across River Tigris in World War One. So the Indians have been performing in Middle East. They have been waging war in Europe. So the part played by the Indians in World War One was tremendous.